The NCAA has been rendered effectively powerless by who? The government. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from ESPN Central Texas. Thank you for making Locked On Big 12 your first listen every single day. Look, I know that there have been talks of the SEC and the Big Ten wanting to change the format of the college football playoff and possibly expanding further. We'll get to that this week, but today the NCAA loses in court again. And the Big 12 and other conferences are certainly in preliminary talks behind the scenes about exiting, finding a way out, finding a way to move forward without the NCAA. Let's go there. Let's go there today, as well as court storming in basketball will not kill you, and Kansas State wins in overtime. Baylor wins on the road against TCU. I do still have a sunburn, and I'm still wearing my Savannah Ghost Pirate sweatshirt. Yes, thank you for asking. A judge rules that the NCAA is effectively powerless. We keep getting ruling after ruling from the government. There's one thing more powerful in the country than the NCAA that's so high and mighty and picks some schools to pick on when it comes to lawsuits and allegations and how they handle those. There's just one thing that is better than that and bigger than that and badder than that, and it's the actual government. And in this case, the NCAA once again has been overruled, and we have got into conversations about antitrust laws and whether or not the NCAA is legally treating college athletes in the way that they are compensated for what they do. And now this one has an NIL focus, and I'm going to make the case that this ruling, that this entire scenario for the NCAA is not the beginning, but another massive domino in the Big Ten, the SEC, the ACC, if it still exists, the Big 12, and other conferences trying to pull away from the NCAA because that is where we are headed. A judge hands the NCAA yet another loss. This is according to the AP, literally AP News. We can't get any better than that. The NCAA's ability to govern college sports and more than 500,000 athletes has suffered yet another blow as in the NIL realm, a federal judge barred the organization from enforcing its rules prohibiting name, image, and likeness compensation for recruits by granting a preliminary injunction by demanding the states of demanded by the states of Tennessee and Virginia. What does that mean? It's a bunch of jargon. It's like, in essence, the NCAA cannot stop you from using NIL, student athlete, and they can't stop you, school, from promoting these athletes via NIL. The rules of the NCAA are fairly vague. We don't know exactly. I'm sure you've heard this from other talking heads out there. We don't know exactly what NIL means, how far we can take it, what can we do with it, when does it begin? If you're a junior in high school or you're a senior in high school and, I just signed my letter of intent, or I committed, or technically I know I'm going to play for this college. Can I accept money from this donor? Or a third-party donor wants to give me $4.3 million, but he only wants me to mow his lawn. What do I do with that? How do I go through compliance with that? These are questions that we can't really cleanly answer. And guess what? This is the wildest part. Every university is kind of doing it different. And the NCAA said, we don't want these schools recruiting with NIL. We don't want a school to be able to say, hey, 17-year-old, we can pay you $2.3 million in your first year. Please come to us. We can pay you $110,000 or $10,000. They don't want any of that. And a Tulane professor and lawyer says there's no question, this is to the AP, the NCAA has never faced more attacks from different areas at one time, and things are snowballing. I think that's why there are so many serious discussions about how college sports needs to change and what those changes will look like. We've done it. We jumped in the water. We can't. We're wet. We jumped in the water. We can't. It's not like dry off. We didn't actually do it. We didn't puncture the wound. Like we fired the first shot. NIL was approved. We can pay athletes. The transfer portal was approved, and the NCAA had this whole thing about how, you can transfer twice, and that's the rule. And then, what if that goes against these guys, these players being employees, and now you could be employed by one, technically with NIL, you could be employed by one place, but now we can't bar them from being employed by another. And it's the semantics of this thing that just makes so little sense that the NCAA's attempt to govern those has failed. A U.S. district judge, Clifton Corker, says while maintaining competitive balance in college sports is a legitimate and important endeavor, spreading competition evenly across the member institutions by restraining trade is precisely the type of anti-competitive conduct the Sherman Act seeks to prevent. My brother in Christ, did you just hear that quote? We are bringing up the Sherman Act once again and the competitive advantages across college athletics and how they deal and how they associate with the literal laws of the United States of America. How about the Big 12? According to the AP, Oklahoma State Athletic Director Chad Weiberg said the Cowboys had anticipated the decision, but were awaiting further guidance from the Big 12 Conference and the NCAA. The NCAA said it would review the ruling and talk with its member schools about possible policy changes, and that is all effectively happening today. This is wild within itself. Charlie Baker, the president of the NCAA, very informational podcast today, by the way, says an endless patchwork of state laws and court opinions make clear partnering with Congress is necessary to provide stability for the future of all college athletes. And here's where I get in my spiel of the Big 12, the SEC, and everybody else with an impending exit of the NCAA. They don't know what they're doing, and they can't get it right. Charlie Baker, the president, is grasping at straws. How do I know that? Well, he proposed pretty recently that major schools in college athletics pay their own athletes. Basically, they become employees of your school. And if they unionize, sure, they can unionize their employees of your school. As long as you pay half your athletes $30,000, that was effectively his proposal. They can become athletes of the school. And if your school can afford to do that, create your own league. You'll be under the NCAA umbrella, but we'll create the super league of super teams that can afford to do more with their athletes, and those teams can compete at the highest level for national championships. Legitimately, the president of the NCAA said that. All of America looked at him and said, that feels desperate. What you're proposing that all these teams like a Michigan, like an Alabama, like an LSU, they get to do their own thing. They're still an NCAA school, but they can do whatever they want. That feels like you just want to try to hold on to what little power you have by saying, hey, I'm going to reduce some of my power, but you're still in power. And with that, we've come to a point now where the trust in the NCAA is gone. We've talked about investigations in college football and college basketball. And if you're a Big 12 fan, especially, you think about like Kansas basketball, where we all every year, all the time, we think about, oh, those guys are cheaters and Bill Self's a cheater and he's never been punished for it. And the double standard that happens across every school in America, the NCAA is saying that this player can play. Well, okay, he is on his fourth transfer school, or this player can't play. Well, he moved back home because his mom has cancer, right? None of it's made sense. The NCAA has taken advantage of it, the power that it's had. And now that the kids, the ones who are actually making these schools the money, actually making the NCAA the money, are the ones who are getting more representation, the NCAA is going to the wayside. And I don't think there's a way to recover. So if you're the Big 12, and you know the SEC and the Big 10 are in behind closed doors conversations about exiting the NCAA and how to move forward, number one, if you're the Big 12, you should be having those conversations too. Number two, and more importantly, from a viewer standpoint, for you and me, those conversations are happening. I think you're naive to believe the Big 12 is not already talking about what it looks like in the future following the SEC and the Big 10 wherever they go. Will the Big 12 be a catalyst in leaving what the NCAA is, leaving that governing body? I don't think so. I don't know if the Big 12 has enough prowess to do that. I'm not sure the SEC and the Big 10 will try to follow that coattail, but when those two conferences, when the major two conferences do it, which is impending, the Big 12 has to as well. And with that, we see the death of sorts in general college athletics, but at the same time, it sounds like there are some people in these conversations who want to build traditional college sports back, almost as if, and hear me out, maybe this is my tinfoil hat moment, these conferences that are expanding are creating very impractical models, like USC playing Northwestern in a conference game. And that impractical model is what leads us almost back to the beginning, where things with the NCAA fall apart. And when we govern ourselves once again, we can all go back the way things were, but we cut the dead weight. We cut an Oregon State, we cut a Boston College, and we do it with the schools that the nation cares about. I think that's where we're headed. Back to the way things were, but without the dead weight. And that might be bad to your school. There are some schools that will get left behind. But I believe the Big 12 will be headed out of the NCAA because the SEC and the Big 10 are going to. That's shown again because the literal government says the NCAA is wrong once again. Coming up, court storming is not going to kill you. This is Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is the place to go when today I was like, I could use some extra cash. I want to go to this nice restaurant, maybe go out on a cute date. And can I afford it? Well, I can now. Thank you, FanDuel, by betting on Baylor basketball against TCU. Was I that confident? No. But right now you can put $5, just $5 on a bet and get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet if you're a new customer at FanDuel. $150 if your bet wins. Quick bets, live same game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to shoot your shot. It is so easy. Download the FanDuel app. FanDuel.com/lockedon right now. FanDuel is the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Court storming is not going to kill you, and we should all just take a step back and stop being so soft. ESPN, the talking heads at ESPN have proposed that court storming is going to make everyone die. And my brother, I got to tell you, the ACC, right, where Duke is, has had more court stormings than anybody else since 1997. I think the number is 58. And by the way, I don't think anybody's been injured from those. Like we're talking about Kyle Filipowski at Duke right now and how, he's so banged up, and Caitlin Clark, and she's so banged up. The students ran into them, and they're trying to target them and hurt them. And guess what? Filipowski is fine. We knew he was fine from the very beginning as they're like limping him off the court. Honestly, to me, had these athletes not been so dramatic, had their coaches not been so dramatic, I could maybe get behind this whole deal a little bit better. But the epidemic here is not the actual court storming. It's the talking heads who are trying to kill tradition in the game over something that's a non-issue. We are making something extravagant out of nothing. How many players have been hurt? How many players have been hurt during a court storm? I'll wait. I've Googled this. I've tried to find player is injured during court storm. Caitlin Clark was not. They've already said that Kyle Filipowski is questionable at their home game against Louisville, one of the worst teams in the power conferences in college basketball. It would be hilarious if Filipowski did not play in the game. If he did not play in the game against Louisville because he was nursing his injury from a court storm. This whole deal is absurd to me because no one's been hurt doing it. We know of people being dramatic during it, but we don't know of anybody actually hurt. And there are now media members, like it was Jay Billis, that said, arrest. That's right. Arrest students who come on the court. Worse than that, ESPN also proposed a $1 million fine for anyone who storms the court. And then maybe the craziest thing here, what about if the home team just goes in the student section per Seth Greenberger? What about a 1 minute grace period to get everybody off the court? I truly believe this is maybe the wildest part of the whole deal. And I know I keep saying they're wild, but it shocks me. All of this shocks me. There are coaches who are coming to the podium and saying, yeah, man, we can't have court storming. Namely the Kansas and Duke, whose students don't get to storm the court. Good for you. That's fine. Who have pictures in their office of court storms, whose favorite game memories involved celebrating with the students. And we see field storms in football, and those players don't get hurt. And honestly, it hasn't really been an issue. We don't ever see videos of the star quarterback who's falling down or, I hurt my ankle because the field was stormed. But the court's a different story. What if we were to train Kyle Filipowski that you lost? Get off the court, or any other player in college athletics, you lost, get off the court. Why does it have to be on the students to have less fun? Last night, I was watching the Baylor men's basketball game against TCU, the TCU men's basketball game against Baylor. And one of the points that brought up the media storms the court. Man, when I worked in TV news, as soon as the game was over, I have a camera on my shoulder. I'm only looking through that lens, and I'm running on the court to get film of the team after the game. I could just as easily run into a player. We're not banning media court storms, and those happen no matter the game, much less a tight game against a rival opponent or top 25 team at home. How about security people? The average age of that guy in the yellow vest or the fluorescent green vest has got to be at least 70. Some of them are hobbling around. And I'm sure they're great people, but they're not stopping jack squat from storming these courts. And more than anything, again, coaches have celebrated this since the beginning of time, celebrating with fans, coming out with fans, doing things with fans, and having those very pictures hung up in their office because it is their favorite. It is their favorite memory as an institution. Seth Davis says, how come we never see court storms at NBA games? Are those fans more measured, less enthusiastic? Which they are, by the way. They are much less enthusiastic. No, Seth Davis says, it's because the NBA lets everyone know that if you step on the court, you'll leave the arena in handcuffs. It's really that easy. And then Kendall Kaut, who's one of my favorite basketball analysts, says this, and it is genius. College sports draw much more passion because when it says Baylor, Kansas, North Carolina across the chest, those same fans also go to that place, have more of a connection than professionals where I live in this town on the jersey where almost none of the players live. Matt Kemp lived in Arlington, Texas when he played for the Dodgers, right? These guys in professional basketball don't really have a connection in 93% of cases to the team or the town they play in. It's not like a school where these guys actually participate there and have their friends in the stands. That's why kids rush the court, because they do care more than the NBA. And guess what? Again, this is a non-issue. No one's gotten hurt. They've only been dramatic. I'm sorry that students have to stop rushing the court because you want to be dramatic. No one has been injured doing this. There is no record of players being hurt doing this. And the only reason you want us to stop having fun to kill one of the greatest traditions literally in sports is because good guy at hoop got hurt but faked it. That doesn't fly with me. And I don't think the big names that are talking about this have any grasp over how fans actually feel, how fans have conducted themselves, and how smooth this has been in the history of college basketball. It's not new. It's been happening like the Heartland College sports guys. It's not new. This isn't just something new to film a TikTok. That was their whole point. It's like, oh, these guys are just trying to film these chads are filming TikToks. No. We've been storming courts for decades. I don't know why we have to kill it now. It's tradition, and it hasn't hurt anybody. Still, despite two of the best athletes, sure, trying to fake it, that doesn't hurt them. Fake being hurt doesn't actually hurt them. It'd be funny if Kyle Filipowski set out against Louisville, who's terrible, just to prove a point, and then it would almost prove even more so how stupid this whole thing is, that he's just not hurt, and we just should keep doing the way that we've done things because nothing bad has happened. This is Locked On Big 12 coming up. Kansas State, March, Baylor, March, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by GameTime. GameTime is where I go when I need tickets. It's like, oh, shoot. The game's coming up in 2 hours. I want to go see the Savannah Ghost Pirates play hockey. How do I do it? I go to GameTime, and it's that easy. I say, GameTime, show me a seat. Show me the seat that I'll sit in. They say, oh, here's the seat. What's the view from the seat look like? Oh, here's the view. How much am I going to pay? Oh, here's what you're going to pay plus the fees. And it's great because I can put in code Vegas100 for $100 off a big game ticket. That's right. Terms apply. Download the GameTime app. Use code Vegas100 for $100 off a big game ticket. Yeah, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. If your ticket's $100, that's free because it's $100 off. Yeah. With Vegas 100. GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference right now if you find tickets in the same section, same row for less on a different site. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, and my brother, that is guaranteed. Kansas State goes to overtime and beats West Virginia. Baylor trounces TCU in Fort Worth. And Jerome Tang, you make zero sense. I don't know why Net hates Kansas State. 17-11 overall, 7-8 in the Big 12. To me, that's a tournament resume. When you have 7-8 as your record in Big 12 play, I can still get you to March Madness. That is a game below 500 in the best conference in America. Now, losing 4 straight games, losing 7 out of 8, That was not good. But now 2 consecutive wins, both of them being at home, helps you. And if Kansas State can win 2 of the next 3, they've still got a case going into the Big 12 tournament. I don't think we can count Kansas State out yet. At Cincinnati, winnable. Then 2 top 10 games, one on the road, 1 at home. That's where things get a little more rough. But if you go to Cincinnati and win, lose at Kansas, which makes sense, then beat Iowa State at home, Kansas State with a win or 2 in the Big 12 tournament has a legitimate case in March Madness. Here's the thing that somebody's going to use to push back. Well, they went to overtime with West Virginia. And my brother, that is ugly. It is ugly. 48-26, the score at halftime. And I thought, oh man, Kansas State minus 9.5. My bet is going to soar. What a great call out by me. Then West Virginia outscores Kansas State 53-31 in the second half. Is that good? The answer is no. They go to overtime, where Jerome Tang is an absurd 12-0 in his career now at Kansas State, outscoring the Mountaineers 15-11. We know that West Virginia is not going to March Madness. We know that after the whole Bob Huggins situation, the team that was going to be one of the most dangerous, sneaky squads in the conference is down and out. But what Kansas State did was they won. And that sounds maybe cliche or mundane or like something that doesn't, like, oh yeah, they won, but they won ugly. That's not really how it works here. The metrics aren't going to be like, oh, well, it was ugly. So the algorithm's not going to say, oh, well, it was ugly. And when we talk about these teams, you picture this with me. You go on the ESPN app during bracketology season, you're picking your teams, and they always have like, here are the big wins, here are the big losses. It's never here are the big close games. We don't talk about that. Oh, this team only beat Northwestern State by 8. No, we don't talk about that. Oh, this team only beat so-and-so by 3. We don't mention it. They won. What Kansas State did was got up to overtime where they knew they were going to win, and they won. That, to me, proves that we should be confident, can still be confident in Kansas State possibly making the tournament, because despite an ugly win, that's not going to count against them. For Baylor, if you watch this game, TCU is bad. Offensively bad, and Baylor's defense is just not elite. I was looking at some of the analytics last week, and Baylor's defense has struggled so much under Scott Drew this season, and I just wasn't confident as a Baylor alum that the Bears would win in Fort Worth, because it's a team they've already lost to in Waco, and all TCU has to do is just follow up that win on the road with a win at home, and they couldn't. Not only could they not win, it was ugly. I don't know if it's going to affect their March Madness prowess. I still believe TCU gets in. What it does do is, from my perspective, as a team that knows they're going to get in, now we evaluate how well you can win in March. And for TCU, they are too inconsistent. I'm not sold on the Horned Frogs. I won't sell the Horned Frogs. I'm stuck. What do I do with this team? What do I do? Like losing to Texas at home by 11, losing to Baylor at home, going and losing to Iowa State at home, but on the road beating Kansas State, and going on the road to beat Baylor earlier this year, and fighting Texas Tech on the road, and beating Oklahoma State on the road where I thought they kind of handled them, beating Houston earlier this season when Oklahoma should have beat Kansas, and Oklahoma was top 10 when you beat them. And I just don't know where we put TCU. We put them in March. But what version of TCU will we get? If we get peak TCU, who was right up there with Kansas at Allen Fieldhouse, that's a Sweet 16 team. That's an Elite 8 team. Micah Peavy, an Elite 8 team. If we get what we just saw last night, that team's out in the first round. Oh, for sure. Upset city. Well, that said, they'll probably be an 8 seed playing a 9 seed, whoever, out of the ACC, and that's going to be tight as it is. But TCU, I just need to know who you are. Because, geez, dude, inconsistency is the name of your game. This has been It Always Will Be. Come back tomorrow. We got more Big 12 basketball. The Clemson coach said Big 12 basketball is cheating. I'll talk about that, too. This has been It Always Will Be. Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Dose Grande.